What is good, people? Satsuki the Savage here, and today I'm going to be talking unOrdinary episodes 156 through 165. Now, it's been a long time since I made a review on the series. I think the last review was way back in late September, so it's been legit 4 months since I talked unOrdinary, but we are back in season 2, and so far, Uru-chan, it's been slow, but there's still a lot to talk about. Now, this video will be sectioned off in 4 different segments, and that will be me talking about the characters, talking about this fake Joker situation, talking about the hierarchy, and other miscellaneous topics, which will be a combination of different topics that I'll briefly go over that I didn't feel I had to go or talk about ad nauseum, all right? So with that being said, let's get into the characters. First up the bat, we have Headmaster Vaughn. Now, we didn't learn anything new about Vaughn, but episode 156 reinforced the nature of his character, consequently affirming my view on the world of unOrdinary. Through Vaughn's scolding to John, we can see he prioritizes his stronger students, evident by him giving John special privileges and drawing a line with John's behavior only when the royals were hospitalized. Also, with Vaughn showing a lack of concern for authorities in his talk with Kitty, this would suggest that Vaughn is extremely confident in his strength. What Vaughn's character tells me about the world, though, is that the hierarchy which proposes that might equals right is valued religiously. The fact that this mentality is held by someone who is not only at the top of the food chain, but is in charge of an entire school, educating the youth, is an indication of the mindset of the masses. A fish rots from the head down. When the leaders are bound by the hierarchy, the ones under them become slaves to the system as well. Thus, the problem with the world of unOrdinary is deeply rooted. Back on track though, on to Elaine now. The direction of her character has been surprising, considering her attitude towards John in the past. I'm sure Elaine is still hated to this day for her disgust of cripples, but ironically, at this moment in time, she supports Sarah, a cripple. Elaine has stuck by Sarah's side, even attempting to intercept John for her protection, which opens up 3 possibilities for why we're seeing her have this change of heart. 1. Elaine is still petrified of Sarah potentially getting her powers back, so she does what she can to remain on Sarah's good side. 2. Elaine cherishes Sarah enough as a roommate or as a friend to stay in her corner unconditionally. And 3. Elaine has grown to the point where she doesn't look down on low tiers and cripples any longer. I'd be inclined to say that the current Elaine is a mixture of all 3 possibilities. Either way, she is living proof that good can come with a little sprinkle of bullying. Next up is Blight, who got more focused than he usually gets. In the aftermath of the Royals' defeat and Blight's hospitalization, he had a chance to reflect on his own shortcomings. Blight has taken L's before, by Eisen, by Rain, by Cecile, by Remy, by Arlo, but his more recent losses has a lot more weight to them. Unlike his other defeats that were probably insignificant, his close call with Vulcan and his 2 losses to John truly made him feel weak. In Blight's assistance with Vulcan, Remy almost died, so that was likely the first time Blight's lack of power had near fatal consequences. Then, with Blight's first loss to John, he could have brushed it off if for 1, it wasn't his roommate beating his ass, and 2, if John didn't use his ability better than he could, which I'll talk more in depth about. Lastly, with Blight's second loss to John, it was a situation where Blight failed to protect his friends, and that stings a lot more than losing a petty squabble or a turf war. And to make matters worse, Blight thought he was the heir apparent after Arlo lied and told him that he would be the strongest male in Wellston after his graduation. After John cashed in Blight's reality check by beating him and essentially kicking him out of his own dorm, Blight's pride was shot and he had to cope with his weakness. In turn, Blight now has an intense resolve to get stronger, which he's already acting on. Since John was able to take Blight's ability and shoot 5 energy shits from his fingers, that fueled Blight to improve, which he has because he went from shooting 3 energy shits from his fingers to shooting 4. Blight also seems to be mulling over the idea of becoming a vigilante to be exposed to more fights in order to help him get stronger. Overall, I enjoyed the focus we got on Blight because for starters, he doesn't get much shine, and I think Uru-chan did a good job of establishing Blight's sense of responsibility and presenting his struggle with his weakness. I don't have much to say about Arlo's character in these episodes, but it seems as if he's moving like usual. Arlo's change happened prior to the Royals' takedown, so in these episodes, not much has changed in his thinking. Now, if we're talking about the Arlo of old, the changes I see in the current Arlo is a decrease in his asshole attitude and a heightened level of patience and understanding, albeit not that big of an increase. Arlo still functions as if he's the king because he involves himself in affairs that concern Wellston, but of course, when it comes to John, he doesn't want smoke. That's about all I have for Arlo's side, but I want to go over his meeting with Sarah and people's reaction to Arlo's version of the story. Sarah finally got to hear about John and his transgressions from Arlo, and while this information will affect her, I want to address people's problem with Arlo's side of the story. I've seen comments of people bashing Arlo, saying he didn't tell quote-unquote the whole truth and tried to demonize John, which baffles me. Specifically, what people are referring to is when Arlo told Sarah that John prioritized revenge over saving her when she was kidnapped. Now, we as readers know John did try to save Sarah, so what Arlo said was false, but that doesn't mean that he was lying. From Arlo's perspective, when he's seeing John brutalize Eisen at the most inopportune moment, jeopardizing his rescue mission, it should be easy to see why Arlo would believe that John simply attacked Eisen for revenge, especially when he never knew that John did try to save Sarah. Arlo also has seen John prioritize his image as a cripple over the well-being of Sarah, so that again lowers Arlo's opinion of John. The point is, obviously Arlo's version of the story makes himself look better, but he's not intentionally painting a narrative to absolve himself of blame and sully John's reputation. Ultimately, Arlo still believes he's in the right. He may regret his involvement with John, but he doesn't see himself as the cause of the current state of affairs. And whether you agree with that or not, I think it would be disingenuous to say Arlo was lying and trying to manipulate Sarah. Moving on to Sarah, the focal point of her growth as a character is overcoming the shattered image of John she once had. John was more than a friend to Sarah. He was an inspiration. He was the one who gave Sarah the courage to be herself, and when Sarah lost her powers, John was the model to follow to get her through those tough times. However, now that Sarah has seen Joker in action and heard testimony from Elaine and Arlo, the idolized version of John is now broken, along with their relationship. Sarah has been acting cold towards John because she feels betrayed. With John having powers, this means he has been lying to her constantly since day one. This, combined with the stress of being a cripple, is a recipe for Sarah to fall to despair, but I believe the opposite will happen. Sarah is becoming more and more independent with John being impeached as a role model. She now has to find courage from within herself rather than follow John's example. Sarah also has become the leader of this group that I call Cripple Gang, featuring Evie and Roland, and they depend on Sarah like she once did with John. With that in mind, I think Sarah will feel responsible to instill confidence in the low tiers by continuing to train them, thus transforming into her old mental image of John. Finally, I say the craziest for last, let's talk about John and his polarizing self. John has finally made a move that I don't even think his apologist would excuse, which is him purposely trying to manipulate Sarah with a smirk on his face. Of course, John has done other things that I find more egregious, but this time, this event is all on John Doe. The blame cannot be dispersed elsewhere. With John showing a willingness to gleefully lie to Sarah, we are seeing him further descend into darkness, abandoning his hair gel and white speech bubbles altogether. On top of that, John has now given life to these fake ass jokers, which I'll talk more about, as well as giving Cecile of all motherfuckers the job of protecting Sarah. Next up is going to be a rant on John's actions, so if you wish to skip me bitching, use the timestamp to escape. Ready. I believe I already discussed my issues with John, but I'll go over it as briefly as possible. Not really, since this is a rant, but you already know what it is, okay? So John's whole thing is he wants to be left alone, but he doesn't want to showcase his power because he doesn't want another New Bolsa incident where the power corrupts him. He's beating everyone left and right, friends included. He doesn't want another situation like that, okay? My issue with John is he acts as if him showing his power would then give him the responsibility of being king, okay? This is the thing. He has an example of someone, Sarah, when she had her powers, who was the strongest in Wellston, yet took no responsibility as the ace, as the king, as the queen, as the motherfucking whatever. She did not take any responsibility. She was doing whatever she wanted, sitting on a rooftop with someone that other people perceived as a cripple, okay? Sarah was doing her own thing. So why couldn't he do the same? That makes no sense to me. And the fact that John goes into this school thinking that he can act as a cripple and nothing was going to happen to him, he always just bitches about how he gets bullied. And yes, the bullies are in the wrong. Like, let's make that clear. The bullies are in the wrong. But you know what society you're living in. That's the problem with John. He knows what he's signing up for. If I go into the hood with chains all over my neck, I expect to get fucked up and robbed. That doesn't mean that the people who rob me are in the right. But it makes me stupid for being naive enough to thinking that I can go into a situation and I won't be affected by my environment. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. And John enrolled in Wellston, the strongest school in the district. And you thought you was going to act as a cripple and you weren't going to get bullied? What? Again, the bullies are in the wrong because they shouldn't be bullying in the first place. But John is stupid for thinking that he can act as a cripple and he wasn't going to get bullied because he knows what society is. You know what it is, okay? And again, going back to him showcasing his power, he has the example with Sarah, but the fact that the headmaster and other teachers like Darren who know of John's powers and they let him act as a cripple, that should have been a notion for him that if the headmaster, Darren, Kenny, people like that are letting me act as a cripple, even though they know I'm strong, why wouldn't the students do that as well? If the students knew how strong you were, you really think they're going to say, hey, John, you got to act like a king. Motherfucker, they're not going to step to you. It's that simple. So, John still not showing his powers makes no sense to me. If he truly wants to be left alone, all he had to do from day one, beat Arlo's ass. Try to fight Sarah. I don't know if he's stronger than Sarah because we don't know John's power level, but whatever. All you had to do was beat Arlo day one. You're left alone from then on. Who's going to mess with you? So yeah, that makes no sense for me when it comes to John. And then we have this whole thing where John, this motherfucker, talks to Cecile. And they're discussing Sarah getting bullied, okay? And this motherfucker decides Cecile is the right person, the right motherfucker to protect. What? Cecile. If Arlo could not do it, how would Cecile do it? First, they're in different grades, so it's going to be hard for Cecile to shadow Sarah all day, every day. Second, Cecile is not trustworthy. And not only do you know that, Sarah herself told you that Cecile is not to be trusted. That's the whole reason why Blight got in as a jack over her. Remy took over her queen spot. Blight took over her jack spot. Why? Not because Blight was stronger, because Cecile already said, I'm stronger than Blight. That's why she has a chip on her shoulder in the first place. It's because Sarah deemed her not worthy of being in that position because she was not trustworthy. She holds secrets. So why would you have her protect Sarah? Nigga. What? And the fact that Sarah is the one who did all of this to Cecile, she probably the two people that Cecile is not fucking with is Arlo and Sarah. That's probably why we haven't seen Sarah and Cecile interact, because I don't believe that they have interacted from what I remember. So that's the person you got protecting Sarah instead of you showing your powers. Because he's so caught up in his lie that now he's just like, fuck it, I'm gonna keep lying. Bro, Man, that's it, man. That's it. John, man, that's a head case. That's a head case. But back to the scheduled programming. With my rant aside, the only observation I made about John worth mentioning is when John sees the fake Jokers, he harkens back to his New Boston days. John is watching people impersonate this monster he has created, paralleling to the memory he still has nightmares about. This incident may hint at John having a bit of remorse for what he's been doing, but all in all, he will probably continue to be a jackass until he gets chin checked at full power, maybe by Ember, hopefully from my baby girl, Vulcan. I believe Uru-chan exploring everyone's insecurities and having them come to terms with John being the top dog was the best component of these stretch of episodes. We are mainly focusing on characters who belong in the upper echelon of society, so having John drag them from their thrones by beating and humiliating them forces these characters to undergo some type of growth. On that last statement, that closes the character section of this video. Where I want to go to next is the weakest aspect of these episodes, which for me is the fake Joker plotline. Maybe I'm not seeing the big picture here, but I don't see the fake Joker gimmick as something that's a huge dilemma. Why? Because dressing up as Joker only works as a scare tactic. Even if someone looks like Joker, they don't become as strong as Joker, so when in a fight, all you may gain is a psychological advantage over the target. Even then, the mental edge will only take you so far because if the fake Joker's strength isn't relativistic to the person they're attacking, they will get their ass beat down. At the end of the day, a low tier isn't beating a mid tier just because they wore a black ski mask. The most this black mask can give students is anonymity, and I don't see why people need to fight discreetly when you can already bully folks with no repercussions. I just don't care for this plotline. I don't think it will lead anywhere important, but there can be some good in it. I think this fake Joker fiasco can be used to have a character like Remy, for example, realize the issues in Wellston so she can't remain ignorant to the bullying and the issues with the hierarchy system. Speaking of the hierarchy system, although characters tell us that it's destroyed, is it really? What John did was beat all the Royals' asses in front of the whole school, but how much has that affected the system itself? Because really, nothing has changed. Arlo, Remy, and Blight should still retain their authority because their strength is still the same. Students that got ordered around by the Royals the day before they got beat would still be ordered around after their defeat. The hierarchy should still remain supreme in the story. All John did was reveal that there was someone who stood above the Royals in the school, but since he doesn't reveal himself, what does that matter? Alright, now for the miscellaneous topics. First, I want to say the background characters are the most bravest people in unOrdinary because they will literally talk behind, actually not behind their back, sometimes it's in their face. They will talk in the face of the Royals, or Cecile, it doesn't matter who it is. High tiers, elite tiers, they will talk about them in earshot. And I'm like, bro, what are y'all doing? Because Arlo is just walking by and they're talking shit about him like, oh, yo, he got beat up, he got his ass beat. Like Arlo can't just turn around and just whoop their asses. They are incredibly brave. Incredibly brave. Keep doing what you're doing. Second, I want to talk about Terrence just a little bit because we had a weird moment where Eisen was talking about, he was trying to dissuade people from publishing an article of the fake Jokers, right? And then there was a weird moment where we got focus on his face. Like we just had a close-up of his face. He didn't say anything, and he hasn't been saying anything. But I've already said Terrence is shady. He's definitely working with Ember or some organization because he has the invisibility, and we seen when that whole mall thing happened with Remy, Blyke, and Eisen, some invisible guy was a part of it. We never seen his face, but he also has the same speech bubbles as the invisible guy that we seen because we seen him grown in, and we seen him talk a little bit, I think. But yeah, he's definitely involved in some, I don't know, some underground business, okay? And I'm just saying, like, the focus that we got on him for that specific moment was odd. I don't really know what that means. But again, Terrence is someone that we had to be on the lookout for. So, yeah, keep that in mind. And when it just comes to Ember, we see that they are still killing people. And I feel as if Ember is going to close in on Wellston. Because, again, with Terrence potentially being a part of their organization, I feel like Terrence is just, of course he's still doing things for Ember, but I also believe he's doubling like as a spy, updating Ember on what's going on with Wellston, because Wellston is the strongest school, and with Ember taking out vigilantes, they will probably want to keep tabs on the strongest people in Wellston. So I feel like we're going to be in a situation where, again, Ember is going to close in on Wellston very soon. And the authorities seem to be doing the same thing when it comes to Wellston, because Vaughn has said multiple times the authorities can come. I want them to check me. I want them to come into my house. I want to see what they're about. So, yeah, I feel like that is something on the come up, okay? But that's pretty much all I had to talk about with these stretcher chapters. Again, these stretcher chapters and this season so far has been slow, but again, it's been pretty cool. It's been yeah. I can fuck with it, but I'm just hoping that we see more of the other stuff like Ember, like Layla. I want to see more of the mysteries revealed, okay? But I'm still enjoying what's been going on with the characters, like coming to terms with what's going on with this John situation. So it's been pretty cool. But guys, that's pretty much all I had to say. If you enjoyed this video, like, comment, subscribe. Do not, under any circumstances, talk about any fast pass shit in my comment section. If you do, you getting blocked on sight. Alright? Satsuki the Savage, I am out.
Am I dying to live, or am I living to die? Living a lie, with my hands stressed out. See, I'm stressed out, being the best out. Visions of my